Kudo. How are you? Okay. Let me see. I'm not sure where everything should be. I was scared it would be me. Never, Kudo. You're not even tier 4 yet. You're not even tier 4. You have nothing to worry about. So today we're going to start our Relaxation Reading is back. Woohoo! So the reason it got canceled in the first place was I was getting nervous reading aloud. I think I got rid of that. That's not bothering me so much. And also it was tough to read. The whole idea was like reading before bed. So I would do it at like 9 o'clock. But it's tough for me to stream at night now, so we're just gonna start doing readings every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Minnesota time. And today we're gonna read Lolita. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, and I do have a notebook. I might pause to write things down. I like to do that when I read things. And I've read part of this before. I read like the first half. If anyone's, this could be very, very upsetting. If you're not familiar with the story, just fair warning before you listen. This might not be your cup of tea. But I really admire how he writes. He's a beautiful writer. Vladimir Nabokov. This book was written in, when was this written? 1955 is when it was originally published. Genres are novel, fiction, erotic literature, and tragic comedy. Okay. You guys ready? Hi, Whiskey. How are you? You reading my messages? Me? Did you message me like on Discord? I didn't even open Discord yet. Hi there. Happy Wednesday. New President Day. Yeah. Oh, fuck. Ow. Yes. I just realized we have a new president today. Yeah, that's awesome. Enjoy, guys. Yeah, so there is. Okay, what's lolly? Okay, it refers to Japanese discourse or media pertaining to the attraction of young looking. So I believe that's where lolly, the term lolly comes from. Lolly may refer to Lolita, meaning precociously seductive young girl. Okay, so this is where that comes from. The lolly world, from this book, written and published in 1955. It's crazy. Has come up with an endless genre of pornography and anime alike. It's amazing. Okay, you guys ready? I DM'd. Oh, you slipped right in there. I had a fucking great day. Did you? Oh, it sounds like a bad day, the way you say it. She needs all your messages. Did you mime what they gonna do? Did you mime what they gonna do? Drum? I want a big pot on the mad stream. What? I want a big pot. Oh, that's right. 100 Dolaritos. That's right. You were telling me. Where did I read that? Was it in Pepe? I don't remember. We were celebrating last night. Okay, so Penguin book, Lolita. Do we want to read the beginning biography part? I tried to start it, and it's really clunky and hard to read, but I'll try. I like his writing much more. His writing is very fun to read. You can tell he did not write this. Maybe he did, and he can change his style incredibly. Vladimir Nabokov was born in St. Petersburg in 1899. He was the eldest son of a rich, highly cultivated, and strongly liberal family. When the Bolsheviks seized power, the family left Russia and moved first to London and then to Berlin, where Nabokov rejoined them in 1920 after having completed his studies at Trinity College at Cambridge. Between 1923 and 1940, he published novels, short stories, plays, poems, and translations in the Russian language and established himself. I can't talk. I am getting nervous. Why am I getting nervous? I didn't get nervous. Maybe it's reading other people's work. Okay. Established himself as one of the most outstanding Russian imagery writers. There's a lot of French and other words in here that I'm gonna mispronounce horribly, just so you know. In 1940, he and his wife and son moved to America, where he was a lecturer at Wesley College from 1941 to 1948. He was then professor of Russian literature at Cornell University until he retired from teaching in 1959. Nabokov published his first novel in English, The Real Life of Sebastian Knight. In 1941, his books included Alda, Laughter in the Dark, Despair, Pin, blah, 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 lots of it. Guys, we have a little thing on here. I have it summarized if you guys want to know. This is boring. Let's get the story. I was so upset. And the STAY in the Golden Nugget Hotel. Oh, the Golden Nugget Hotel with 1K day pocket money. That's insane. A trip to Vegas with everything when I was 18. Oh, so when I didn't get the prize and the $1 million job. Oh, I hear. Okay. Okay. Forward. Lolita, or The Confession of a White Widowed Male. Such were the two titles under which a writer of the present note received the strange pages it emulates. Humbert, their author, had died in legal captivity, or coronary thrombosis, on November 16, 1952. A few days before his trial was scheduled to start, his lawyer, my good friend and relation, Clarence Colt Clark, Esquire, now of the District of Columbia Bar, is asking me to edit the manuscript, based his request on a clause in his client's will which empowered my eminent cousin to use his discretion in all matters pertaining to the preparation of Lolita for print. Mr. Clark's decision may have been influenced by the fact that the editor of his choice was just been awarded of the Polling Prize for a modest work. Do the census make sense? Wherein certain morbid states and perversions had been discussed. Most tasks proved simpler than either of us had anticipated, save for the correction of obvious socialisms and a careful suppression of tenacious. This is gonna be tough. Suppression of a few tenacious details that, despite H.H.'s own efforts, still subsisted in his text as signposts and tombstones, indicative of places or persons that taste would conceal and compassion spare. This remarkable memoir is presented intact, its author's bizarre cognomen in his own invention, and of course this mask, through which two hypnotic eyes seemed to glow, had to remain unlifted in accordance with its wearer's wish. While Hayes only rhymes with its heroine's real surname, her first name is too closely interwound with the innermost fiber of the book to allow me to alter it, nor, as the reader will perceive for himself, is there any practical necessity to do so. References to H.H.'s crime may be looked up by the inquisitive in the daily papers by September through October 1952. Its cause and purpose would love... Oh, I hate this. This is the... I'm reading everything italicized, and I hate it. When we get to part 1, it goes away. I hate reading italicized constantly. Why do we have to do long text? Okay, where were we? Its cause and purpose would have continued to remain a complete mystery had not this memoir been permitted to come under my reading lamp. For the benefits of old-fashioned readers who wish to follow the destinies of the real people behind the true story, a few details may be given as received from Mr. Windmuller of Ramsdale, who desires his identity suppressed so that the long shadow of his sorry and sordid business should not reach the community to which he is proud to belong. His daughter, Louise, is by now a college sophomore. Mona Dahl is a student in Paris. Rita has recently married the professor of a hotel in Florida. Mrs. Richard F. Schiller died in childbed, giving birth to a stillborn girl on Christmas Day in 1952 in Graystar, a settlement in the remotest Northwest. Vivian Darkbloom has written a biography, My Q, to be published shortly, and critics who have pursued the manuscript call it her first. Ooh, and critics who have... I'm used to trying to make loud noises when I mess up. I have to get rid of this habit. Okay, this is supposed to be ASMR too. We're gonna whisper. It's gonna be relaxing. So, guys, if it's bedtime where you are, good night. Okay, I hate this part. To be published shortly, and critics who have pursued the manuscript call it her best book. The caretakers of the various cemeteries involved report that no ghost walk. Viewed simply as a novel, Lolita deals with situations and emotions that would remain sparingly vague to the reader had their expression been Hold on, guys. We're gonna have lots of words to look up. Viewed simply as a novel, Lolita deals with situations and emotions that would remain sparingly vague to the reader had their expression been Oh, I love this. I'm gonna learn so many words. Elated by means of Platonist evasions. True, not a single obscene term is to be found in the whole work. Indeed, the robust Philistine who is considered by modern conventions into accepting without qualms a lavish array of four-letter words in a banana novel, will be quite shocked by their absence here. If, however, for this paradoxical prude's comfort, an editor attempted to dilute or omit scenes that a certain type of mind might call aphrodisiac, see in this respect the monumental decision rendered December 6, 1933, by Hon. John M. Woosley in regard to author considerably more outspoken book. One would have to forego the publication of Lolita altogether, since those were scenes that one might ineptly accuse of a sensuous existence of their own, are the most strictly functional ones in the development of a tragic tale tending unswervingly to nothing less than a moral apotheosis. The cynic may say that commercial pornography makes the same claim. The learned may counter... I can do this, guys. The learned... We're almost through. There's one more page of this giant italicized text. Commercial pornography makes the same claim. The learned may counter by asserting that H.H.'s impassionate confession is a tempest in a test tube, that at least 12% of American adult males, a conservative estimate, according to Dr. Blanche Schwartzman, Verbal Communication, enjoy yearly, in one way or another, the special experience H.H. describes with such despair that had our demented diarist gone in the fatal summer of 1947 to a competent psychopathologist, there would have been no disaster. But then, neither would there have been a book. This commentator may be excused for repeating what he has stressed in his own books and lectures, namely of the offensive is frequently but a synonym for unusual, and a great work of art is of course always original, and thus by its very nature should come as a more or less shocking surprise. I have no intention to glorify H.H. No doubt he is horrible, he is abject, he is a shining example of moral leprosy, a mixture of ferocity and jocularity. Sorry guys, we're gonna write down words we don't know. Extreme misery, leprosy, a mixture of ferocity and jocularity. That portrays supreme misery, perhaps, but is it not conducive to attractiveness? He is ponderously capricious. Many of his casual opinions on the people and scenery of his country are ludicrous. A desperate honesty that throbs through his confession does not absolve him from sins of diabolical cunning. He is abnormal. He is not a gentleman. But bow magically, his singing violin can conjure up a tenderness, a compassion for Lolita that makes us entranced with the book while abhorring its author. As a case history, Lolita will become no doubt a classic in psychiatric circles. Hey, Auntie. As a work of art, it transcends its expiratory. I have to quit singing it. Transcends its expiratory aspects, and still more important to us than scientific significance and literary worth is the ethical impact the book should have on the serious reader. For in this poignant personal study, there lurks a general lesson: the wayward child, the egotistic mother, the panting maniac. These are not only vivid characters and a unique story, they warn us of dangerous trends. They point out potent evils. Lolita should make all of us, parents, social workers, educators, apply ourselves with still greater vigilance and vision to the task of bringing up a better generation in a safer world. Wigworth, Mass., August 5th, 1955, John Ray, Jr., Ph.D. I feel like the author wrote that. Nabokov wrote that 100% to set up the books. Don't hate that. That was a perfect leading into Lolita. We shouldn't hate the work. We should appreciate that and take it as a warning. Hello, Auntie Klaus. How are you? Academy leader. It's official, guys. I got the response. We're officially legal to conduct business in Minnesota. So exciting. I have a business. I have a business plaque, guys. I'm an official business owner as of yesterday. I wish I could show more on stream, more of what we've done. But maybe we'll go through different steps. All right, now the story begins. Guys, pay close attention. It's so beautiful how he writes things. He's a very poetic writer. Okay, here we go. Part 1. I love when a whole page just says part 1. And this is the formatting if anyone's interesting. 1. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Lolita, the tip of my tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lolita. She was low, playing low in the morning, standing 4 feet 10 in one sock. She was Lola in slacks. She was Dolly at school. She was Dolores on the dotted line. But in my arms, she was always Lolita. Did she have a precursor? She did. Indeed she did. In point of fact, there might have been no Lolita at all, had I not loved one summer a certain initial girl child. In a Princeton by the sea, on Wynn, about as many years before Lolita was born as my age was that summer. You can always count on a murderer for a fancy prose style. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, exhibit number 1 is what the seraphs and the misformed, simple, noble-winged seraphs envied. Look at this tangle of thorns. Chapter 2. I love that. His chapter was a whole fucking paragraph. He's like, fuck you, I don't have to have a... I love when, formatting is so out of norm. Chapter 2. I was born in 1910, in Paris. My father was a gentle, easygoing person, a salad of racial genes, a Swiss citizen of mixed French and Australian descent, with a dash of the Danube in his veins. I'm going to pass around in a minute some lovely, glossy blue picture postcards. He owned a luxurious hotel in the Riviera. His father and 2 grandfathers had sold wine, jewels, and silk respectively. At 30, he married an English girl, daughter Jerome Dunn, the alpinist and great-granddaughter of 2 Dorset parsons, experts in obscure subjects. paleopedology, and alien harps, respectively. My very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, picnic lighting. When I was 3, and save for a pocket of warmth in the darkest past, nothing of her subsists with the hollows and dwells. Ooh. My very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, picnic lighting, when I was 3. And I want to read it the way it's intended. My very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, picnic lighting, when I was 3. And, save for a pocket of warmth in the darkest past, nothing of her subsists within the hollows and dells of memory, over which, if you can still stand my style, I am writing under observation. The sun of my infancy had set. Surely, you all know those redolent remnants of days suspended, with the midges about some hedge in bloom, or suddenly entered and traversed by the rambler at the bottom of a hill, in the summer dusk, of furry warmth, golden midges. My mother's elder sister Sybil, whom a cousin of my father's had married and then neglected, served in my immediate family as kind of an unpaid governess and housekeeper. Somebody told me later that she had been in love with my father, and that he had lightheartedly taken advantage of it one rainy day and forgotten it by the time the weather cleared. I was extremely fond of her, despite the fatal rigidity of some of her rules. Perhaps she wanted to make of me, in the fullness of time, a better widower than my father. Aunt Sybil had pink-rimmed azure eyes and a waxen complexion. She wrote poetry. She was poetically superstitious. She said she knew she would die soon after my 16th birthday, and did. Her husband, a great traveler in perfumes, spent most of the time in America, where eventually he founded a firm and required a bit of real estate. I grew a happy, healthy child in a bright world of illustrated books, clean sand, orange trees, friendly dogs, sea vistas, and smiling faces. Around me, the splendid Hotel Marana revolved as a kind of I'm so used to making sounds when I make a mistake. I'm gonna shake that habit. Around me, the splendid Hotel Marana revolved as a kind of private universe, a whitewashed cosmos with the blue greater one that blazed outside. From the aproned pot scrubber to the flannelled potentate, everybody liked me. Everybody petted me. Elderly American ladies leaning on their canes listened. I'm not used to so many of these words. This is good. Elderly American ladies leaning on their canes listed toward me like towers of Pisa. Ruined Russian princesses who could not pay my father brought me expensive bonbons. He, Monsieur Petit Papa, took me out boating and biking, taught me to swim and dive and water ski, read to me Don Quixote and Les Miserables. Les Miserables. And I adored and respected him and felt glad for him whenever I overheard the servants discuss his various lady friends, beautiful and kind beings who made much of me and cooed and shed precious tears over my cheerful motherlessness. I attended an English day school a few miles from home, and there I played rackets and fives and got excellent marks, and was on a perfect term with schoolmates and teachers alike. The only definite sexual events that I can remember as having occurred before my 13th birthday, that is, before I first saw my little Annabelle, were a solemn, decorous, and purely theoretical talk about pubertal surprises in the rose garden of the school with an American kid, the son of a then celebrated motion picture actress who he seldom saw in the three-dimensional world, and some interesting reaction on the part of my organism to certain photographs, Pearl and Umbrella with infinitely soft partings, in Pichon's sumptuous La Butte Humaine, that I had flinched from under a mountain of marble-bound graphics in the hotel library. Later, in his delightful debonair manner, my father gave me all the information he thought I needed about sex. This was just before sending me, in the autumn of 1923, to a lycée in Lyon, where we were to spend 3 winters. But alas, in the summer of that year, he was touring Italy, on her daughter, and I had nobody to complain to, nobody to consult. Chapter 3. Hey Triggerstad, how are you? Annabelle was like the writer, of mixed parentage, half English, half Dutch in her case. I remember her features far less distinctively today than I did a few years ago, before I knew Lolita. There are 2 kinds of visual memory. One when you skillfully recreate an image in the laboratory of your mind with your eyes open. And then I see Annabelle, in such general terms as honey-colored skin, thin arms, brown bobbed hair, long lashes, big bright mouth. And the other when you instantly evoke, with shut eyes, on the dark inner side of your eyelids the object, absolutely optical replica of a beloved face, a little ghost in natural colors. And this is how I see Lolita. Let me therefore primly limit myself in describing Annabelle to saying she was a lovely child, a few months my junior. Her parents were old friends of my aunt's, and as stuffy as she. They had rented a villa not far from Hotel Marana. Bald, brown Mr. Lay had fat, powdered Mrs. Lay, born Vanessa Vaness. How I loathed them. At first, Annabelle and I talked of peripheral affairs. She kept lifting handfuls of fine sand and letting it pour through her fingers. Our brains were turned the way those of intelligent European pre-adolescents were in our day and set, and I doubt it much individual genius should be assigned to our interest in the plurality of inhabited worlds. Competitive tennis, infantry, solipsism, and so on. Solipsism. The softness and fragility of baby animals caused us the same intense pain. She wanted to be a nurse in some famished, cystic country. I wanted to be a famous spy. All at once, we were madly, clumsily, shamelessly, agonizingly in love with each other. Hopelessly, I should add, because that frenzy of mutual possession might have been assuaged only by our actually imbibing and assimilating every particle of each other's soul and flesh. But there we were, unable even to mate as slum children would have so easily found an opportunity to do. After one wild attempt we made to meet at night in her garden, of which more later. The only privacy we were allowed was to be out of earshot, but not out of sight on the populous part of the plague. There, on the soft sand, a few feet away from our elders, we would sprawl all morning in a petrified so many words. Paroxysm. I think I know what that means. Of desire. So many great words. And takes advantage of every blessed quirk in space and time to touch each other. Her hand, half hidden in the sand, would creep toward mine. Its slender brown fingers sleepwalking nearer and nearer. Then, her opalescent knee would start on a long, cautious journey. Sometimes a chance rampart built by younger children granted us sufficient concealment to graze each other's salty lips. These incomplete contacts drove our healthy and inexperienced young bodies to such a state of exasperation that not even the cold blue water, under which we still clawed at each other, could bring relief. Among some treasures I lost during the wanderings of my adult years, there was a snapshot taken by my aunt which showed Annabelle, her parents, and the strayed, elderly lame gentleman, a Dr. Cooper, who that same summer courted my aunt, grouped around a table in a sidewalk cafe. Annabelle did not come out well. caught as she was in the act of bending over her chocolate grace, and her thin bare shoulders and the parting in her hair were but all that could be identified. As I remember that picture, amid the sunny blur into which her lost loveliness amid perfect timing. Sorry guys. Lolita. I can make it stop. I promise. Where is it? I don't wanna answer it. Sorry guys. Oh, I missed that. Fuck. I think I know what this call's about. It's okay though. We can address it another time. Who is calling? Work stuff. But that's fine because I can read that later. That's for not right now. Where were we, guys? Madly, clumsily, shamelessly, agonizingly in love with each other, hopelessly. I love that. Okay. Okay, a lame gentleman, a Dr. Cooper, who that same summer courted my aunt, grouped around a table in a sidewalk cafe. Annabelle did not come out well, caught as she was in the act of bending over her chocolate glass. It's a French word, and her thin bare shoulders and the parting in her hair were about all that you could identify. As I remember that picture, amid the sunny blur into which her lost loveliness graded. But I, sitting somewhat apart from the rest, came out with a kind of dramatic conspicuousness. A moody, beetle-browed boy in a dark sports shirt and well-tailored white shorts, his legs crossed, sitting in profile, looking away. That photograph was taken on the last day of our fatal summer, just a few minutes before we made our second and final attempt to thwart fate. Under the flimsiest of pretexts, this was our very last chance, and nothing really mattered. We escaped from the cafe to the beach and found a desolate stretch of sand, and there, in the violet shadow of some red rocks forming a kind of cave, had a brief session of avid caresses, with somebody's lost pair of sunglasses for only witness. I was on my knees, and on the point of possessing my darling, when two bearded bathers, the old man of the sea and his brother, came out of the sea with exclamations of ribald encouragement, and 4 months later, she died of typhus in Corfu. Chapter 4. How you doing, guys? Who is calling? It was work. It's no big deal. Happy Wednesday, guys. We're doing this every Wednesday now. Wednesdays and readings. Reading on Wednesdays. I know words. I have words. Chapter 4. He hasn't even met Lolita yet. I leaf again and again through these miserable memories and keep asking myself, was it then, in the glitter of that remote summer, that the rift in my life began? Or was my excessive desire for that child only the first evidence of an inherent singularity? When I try to analyze my own cravings, motives, actions, and so forth, I surrender to a sort of retrospective imagination which feeds the analytic faculty, with boundless alternatives, and which causes each visualized route to fork and refork without end, and the maddening complex prospect of my past. When I try to analyze my own cravings, motives, actions, and so forth, I surrender to a sort of retrospective imagination, which feeds the analytic faculty with boundless alternatives, and which causes each visualized route to fork and refork without end in the maddening complex prospect of my past. I am convinced, however, that in a certain magic and fateful way, Lolita began with Annabelle. I also know that the shock of Annabelle's death consolidated the frustration of that nightmare summer, made of it a permanent obstacle to any further romance throughout the cold years of my youth. The spiritual and physical had been blended in us with the spiritual and physical had been blended with us with a perfection that must remain incomprehensible to that matter of fact, crude, standard-brained youngsters of today. Long after her death, I felt her thoughts floating through mine. Long before we met, we had had the same dreams. We compared notes. We found strange affinities. The same June of the same year, 1919, a stray canary had fluttered into her house and mine, in two widely separated countries. Oh, Lolita, had you loved me less? I had reserved for the I have to slow down. I'm trying to go too fast, and it's not helpful. I have reserved for the conclusion of my Annabelle phase that the account of our unsuccessful first tryst. One night she managed to deceive the vicious vigilance of her family. In a nervous and slender-leaved mimosa grove at the back of their villa, we found a perch on the ruins of a low stone wall. Through the darkness and the tender trees, we could see the arabesque of lighted windows, which, touched up by the colored links of sensitive memory, appeared to me now like playing cards, presumably because a bridge game was keeping the enemy busy. She trembled and twitched as I kissed the corner of her parted lips and the hot lobe of her ear. A cluster of stars palely glowed above us. Between the silhouettes of long, thin leaves, that vibrant sky seemed as naked as she was under her light frock. I saw her face in the sky, strangely distant, as if it emitted a faint radiance of its own. Her legs, her lovely, live legs, were not too close together. And when my hand located what it sought, a dreamy and eerie expression, half pleasure, half pain, came over those childish features. She sat a little higher than I, and whenever in her solitary ecstasy she was led to kiss me, her head would bend with a sleepy, soft, drooping movement that was almost woeful, and her bare knees caught and compressed my wrist and slackened again, and her quivering mouth distorted by the acidity of some mysterious potion. With a sibilant intake of breath came near to my face. She would try to relieve the pain of love by first roughly rubbing her dry lips against mine. Then my darling would draw away with a nervous toss of her hair, and then again come darkly near and let me feed on her mouth. While with a generosity that was ready to offer her anything, my heart, my throat, my entrails, I gave her to hold in her awkward fist the scepter of my passion. I recall the scent of some kind of toilet powder. I believe she stole it from her mother's Spanish maid, a Swedish lowly, musky perfume. It mingled with her own biscuity odor and my biscuity odor. Oh, I don't want to start getting the giggles. It mingled with her own biscuity odor, and my senses were suddenly filled to the brim. A sudden commotion in a nearby bush prevented them from overflowing, and as we drew away from each other, and with aching veins attended to what was probably a prowling cat, there came from the house her mother's voice calling her. With a rising, frantic note, and Dr. Cooper ponderously limped out into the garden. But that mimosa grove, the haze of the stars, the tingle, the flame, the honeydew, and the ache remained with me, and that little girl with her seaside limbs and ardent tongue haunted me ever since, until at last, 24 years later, I broke her spell, incarnating her in another. Chapter 5. Blushity. Did I blush? Busity? Busity. Biscuity. Buscuity. It's spelled differently. There's so many words I don't recognize. Okay, chapter 5. So he's an adult now, right? He's going to be describing himself. He's always an adult. The days of my youth, as I look back on them, seemed to fly away from me in a flurry of pale, repetitive scraps like those morning snowstorms of used tissue paper that a train passenger sees whirling in the wake of the observation car. In my sanitary relations with women, I was practical, ironical, and brisk. While a college student in London and Paris paid ladies sufficed me. My studies were meticulous and intense, although not particularly fruitful. At first I planned to take a degree in psychiatry, as many manqués talents do, but I was even more manqué than that. A peculiar exhaustion, I was so oppressed. Doctor set in, and I switched to English literature, where so many frustrated poets end as pipe-smoking teachers in tweeds. Paris suited me. I discussed Soviet movies with expatriates. It's hard to say. I'll know the word, but it can be tough. The French, all the French bullshit I'm struggling with the French. I sat with Ernest and the Dumaguet. I published tortuous essays and torturous, that's not even French, torturous essays in obscure journals. I composed pastiches. Fraulein Van Kulp may turn her hand upon the door. I will not follow her, nor Fresca, nor that go. A paper of mine entitled The Pristine Theme in a Letter from Keats to Benjamin Bailey was chuckled over by the 6 or 7 scholars who read it. I launched upon an Histoire abrégée de la poésie anglaise for a prominent publishing firm, and then started to compile that manual of French literature for English-speaking students. Thank God. With comparisons drawn from English writers. Oh wait, we're not even doing our relaxation reading voice. Like, it helps when it's nighttime, because I'm like in bedtime mode. Okay. I think if we do it like right here, that'll be okay. I don't know where to put it. Let me know. I found a job teaching English to a group of adults in Nachono. Then a school for boys employed me for a couple of winters. Now and then I took advantage of the acquaintances I had formed among social workers and psychotherapists to visit in their company various institutions, such as orphanages and reform schools, where pale pubescent girls with matted eyelashes could be stared at in perfect impunity, remindful of that granted one in dreams. Now I wish to introduce the following idea. Between the age limits of 9 and 14, there occur maidens who, to certain bewitched travelers, twice or many times older than they, reveal their true nature, which is not human, but nymphic, that is, demonic. And these chosen creatures I propose to designate as nymphs. It will be marked that I substitute terms for spatial ones. In fact, I would have the reader see 9 and 14 as the boundaries. The mirrory that's a hard one. The mirrory beaches and rosy rocks. An enchanted island haunted by those nymphs of mine and surrounded by a vast misty sea. Between those age limits are all girl children nymphs. Of course not. Otherwise, we who are in the know, we lone voyagers, we nympholettes, would have long gone insane. Neither are good looks any criteria, and vulgarity, or at least what a given community terms so, does not necessarily impair certain mysterious characteristics, the fey grace, the elusive, shifty, soul-shattering, insidious charm that separates the nymphet from such covils of hers, as her incomparably more dependent on the spatial word of synchronous phenomena than on that intangible island of entranced time where Lolita plays with her likes. Within the same age limits, the number of true nymphets is strikingly inferior to that of provisionally plain, or just nice, or cute, or even sweet and attractive ordinary, plumpish, formless, cold-skinned, essentially human little girls, with tummies and pigtails, who may or may not turn into adults or of great beauty. Plumpish, formless, cold-skinned, essentially human little girls with tummies and pigtails who may or may... Am I pointing to this? Sorry. I'm obsessed with how he is this forming the sentence. Formless, coldless, essentially human little girls with tummies and pigtails who may or may not turn into adults of great beauty. Look at that ugly dumplings and black stockings and white hats that are metamorphosized into stunning stars of the screen. A normal man given a group of I keep wanting to add words. A normal man given a group photograph of schoolgirls or Girl Scouts and asked to point out the clumsiest, the comeliest one will not necessarily choose the nymphet among them. You have to be an artist and a madman, a creature of infinite melancholy, with a bubble of hot poison. Oh my god, I want to write that down. A bubble of hot poison in your loins. You have to be an artist and a madman, a creature of infinite melancholy, with a bubble of hot poison in your loins and a super voluptuous flame permanently aglow in your subtle spine. Oh, how you have to cringe and hide, in order to discern at once, by ineffable signs, the slightly feline outline of a cheekbone, the slenderness of a downy limb, and other indecises which despair and shame and terrors of tenderness forbid me to tabulate. The little deadly demon among the wholesome children, she stands unrecognized by them and unconscious herself of her fantastic power. Welcome back, Captain Stark. Furthermore, since the idea of time plays such a magic part in the matter, the student should not be surprised to learn that there must be a gap of several years, never less than 10. I should say, generally 30 or 40, and as many as 90 in a few known cases between maiden and man to enable the latter to come under an nymphet's spell. It is the question of local adjustment, of a certain distance that the inner eye thrills to surmount, and a certain contrast that the mind perceives with a gasp of a perverse delight. When I was a child, and she was a child, my little Annabelle was no nymphet to me. I was her equal, a fawnlet in my own right, on that same enchanted island of time, about today, in September 1952. After 29 years have elapsed, I think I can distinguish her and the initial fateful elf in my life. We loved each other with a premature love, marked by a fierceness that so often destroys adult lives. I was a strong lad and survived, but the poison was in the wound, and the wound remained ever open, and soon I found myself maturing amid a civilization which allows a man of 25 to count a girl of 16, but not a girl of 12, to court. I found myself maturing amid a civilization which allows a man of 25 to court a girl of 16, but not a girl of 12. No wonder, then, that my adult life during the European period of my existence proved monstrously twofold. Overtly, I had so-called normal relationships with a member of terrestrial women, with a number of terrestrial women having pumpkins or pears for breasts. Inly, I was consumed by a hell furnace of localized lust for every passing nymphet whom, as a law-abiding poltroon, I never dared approach. The human females I was allowed to wield were but palliative agents, I am ready to believe that the sensations I derived from natural fornication were much the same as those known to normal big males consorting with their normal big mates in that routine rhythm which shakes the world. The trouble was that those gentlemen had not, and I had, caught glimpses of an incomparably more poignant bliss. The dimmest of the polluta of dreams was 1,000 times more dazzling than all the adultery the most virile writer of genius or the most talented poem might imagine. My world was split. I was aware of not one but two sexes, neither of which was mine. Both would be termed female by the anatomist, but to me, through the prism of my senses, they were as different as mist and mast. All this I rationalized now. In my 20s and early 30s, I did not understand my throes quite so clearly. While my body knew what it craved, my body rejected my body's plea. While my body knew what it craved for, my mind rejected my body's every plea. One moment I was ashamed and frightened, another recklessly optimistic. Taboos strangulated me. Psychoanalysts wooed me with pseudo-liberations and pseudo-libidos. The fact that to me the only objects of amorous tremor were sisters of Annabelle's. Her handmaids, the girl pages, appeared to me as time as a forerunner. The fact that I'm not doing well. We're gonna try to get better. The fact to me the only objects of amorous tremor were sisters of Annabelle's. Her handmaids and girl pages appeared to me at times as a forerunner of insanity. At other times I would tell myself that it was all a question of attitude, that there was really nothing wrong in being moved to distraction by girl children. Let me remind my reader that in England, with the passage of the children, and I wish I had this thing where it keeps your line. I keep moving and fidgeting, losing my line. Okay. Let me remind my reader that in England, with the passage of the Children and Young Person Act in 1933, the term girl child is defined as a girl who is over 8 but under 14 years. After that, from 14 to 17, the statutory definition is young person. In Massachusetts, on the other hand, a wayward child is technically one between 7 and 17 years of age, who, moreover, habitually associates with vicious and immoral persons. They use this vicious a lot. Hugh Broughton, a writer of controversy, in the reign of James I, has proved that Rahab was a harlot. Hugh Broughton, a writer of controversy, in the reign of James I, has proved that Rahab was a harlot at 10 years of age. This is all very interesting, and I dare say you see me already frothing at the mouth in a fit. But no, I am not. I am just winking happy thoughts into a little tittle cup. Here are some more pictures. Here is Virgil, who could, the infant, sing in single tone. Would probably prefer a lad's perineum. Here are two of King Achates and Queen Nefertiti's prenuptial Nile daughters. That royal couple had a litter of six. I can't read today, guys. I'm doing really I feel like I'm getting nervous again. So I guess it's reading other people's stuff that makes me nervous, because I don't care if I fuck up mine. Makes sense, I guess. But these sounds... Okay, we're gonna keep going. This book is great. I love this book. I love his writing. Okay. Here's Virgil, who could the infant sing in a single tone, but probably preferred a lad's perineum. Here are two of King Achates and Queen Nefertiti's prenuptial Nile daughters. That royal couple had a litter of 6, wearing nothing but many necklaces of bright beads, relaxed on cushions, intact after 3,000 years, with their soft, brown, puppy bodies, cropped hair, and log ebony eyes. Here are some brides of 10, compelled to seat themselves on the fascium, the viral ivory on the temples of the classical scholarship. Marriage and the cohabitation before the age of puberty are still not uncommon in certain East India provinces. Lepecha, old men of 80 copulate with girls of 8, and nobody minds. After all, Dante fell madly in love with his Beatrice when she was 9. A sparkling girling, painted and lovely and bejeweled in a crimson frock, and this was in 1274. In Florence, at a private feast in the merry month of May, and when Petrarch fell madly in love with his Lorraine, she was a fair-haired nymphet of 12, running in the wind, in the pollen and dust, a flower in the night, in the beautiful plain as described from the hills of Vaucluse. But let us be prim and civilized. Humbert tried hard to be good. Really and truly he did. He had the utmost respect for ordinary children and their purity and vulnerability, and under no circumstances would he have interfered with the innocence of a child. If there was the least risk of a row, but if there was the end of the sentence kind of makes a difference there. Okay. But how his heart beat when among the innocent throng he espied a demon child, infant charmant de fourbe, dim eyes, bright lips, 10 years in jail if you only show her you are looking at her. So life went. Humbert was perfectly capable of intercourse with Eve, but it was Lilith he longed for. The bud stage of breast development appears early, 10.7 years. The sequence of somatic changes accompanying pubescence. And the next rational item available is the first appearance of pigmented pubic hair, 11.2 years. My little cup brims with tittles. A shipwreck, an idyll, alone with the drowned passenger's shivering child. Darling, this is only a game. How marvelous were my fancied adventures as I sat on a hard park bench, pretending to be immersed in a trembling book. Around the quiet scholar, nymphets played freely, as if he were a familiar statue or part of an old tree's shadow and sheen. Once, a perfect little beauty in a tartan frock, with a clatter, put her heavily armed foot near me upon the bench to dip her slim, bare arms into me and tighten the strap of her roller skate. And I dissolved in the sun, with my book for a fig leaf, as her auburn ringlets fell over her skinned knee, and the shadow of leaves I shared pulsated and melted on her radiant limb next to my chameleonic cheek. Another time, a red-haired schoolgirl hung over me in the metro, and a revelation of auxiliary russet I obtained remained in my blood for weeks. I could list a great number of those one-sided, diminutive romances. Some of them ended in a rich flavor of hell. It happened, for instance, that from my balcony, I would notice a light. Hold on, guys. It happened, for instance, that from my balcony, I would notice a lighted window across the street and what looked like a nymphet at the act of undressing before a cooperative mirror. Thus isolated, thus removed, the vision acquired an especially keen charm that made me race with all speed toward my lone gratification. But abruptly, fiendishly, the tender pattern of nudity I had adored would be transformed into the disgusting, lamplit, bare arm of a man in his underclothes, reading his paper by the open window in the hot, damp, hopeless summer night. Rope skipping, hopscotch. That old woman in the black who sat down next to me on my bench, on my rack of joy. A nymphet was groping under me for a lost marble, and asked if I had stomach ache, the insolent hag. Ah, leave me alone in my pubescent park, in my mossy garden. Let them play around me forever. Never grow up. Chapter 6. Gonna grab a drink. Chapter 6. Apropos. I have often wondered what became of those nymphet letters. I have often wondered, I keep wanting to read the wrong word. I have often wondered what became of those nymphets later. In this wrought iron world of crisscross cause and effect, could it be that the hidden throb I stole from them did not affect their future? I had possessed her, and she never knew it. All right, but would it not tell sometime later? Had I not somehow tampered with her fate by involving her image in my own volutas? VOLUPTAS. Oh, it was, and remains a source of great and terrible wonder. I learned, however, what they looked like. Those lovely, maddening, thin-armed nymphets when they grow up. I remember walking along an animated street on a great spring afternoon somewhere near the Manon Lane. A short, slim girl passed me at a rapid, high-heeled, tripping step. We glanced back at the same moment. She stopped, and I accosted her. She came hardly up to my chest hair, and had the kind of dimpled, round little face French girls so often have. And I liked her long lashes and tight-fitting tailored dress, sheathing in a pearl gray, her young body, which still retained, and that was the nymphic echo, the chill of delight. The leap in my loins, a childish something mingling with the professional fritillament of her small, agile rump. I asked her price, and she promptly replied with melodious silvery, and she promptly replied with melodious silvery precision. A bird, a very bird, sent. I tried to haggle, but she saw the awful longing in my lowered eyes, directed so far down at her round forehead and rudimentary hat, a band, a posy, and with one beat of her lashes, "Tant pis," she said, and made as if to move away. Perhaps only 3 years earlier, I might have seen her coming home from school. That evocation settled the matter. She led me up the usual steep stairs with the usual bell clearing the way for the monsieur who might not care to meet another monsieur. On the mournful climb to the abject room, all bed and bidet. As usual, she asked at once for her petite cadeau, and as usual I asked her name, Monique, and her age, 18. I was pretty well acquainted with the banal way of street walkers. They all answer "Dixit," a trim twitter, a note of finality and wistful deceit which they may emit up to 10 times per day. The poor little creatures. But in Monique's case, there could be no doubt she was, if anything, adding 1 or 2 years to her age. Then I deduced from many details of her compact, neat, curiously immature body, having shed her clothes with fascinating rapidity. She stood for a moment, partly wrapped in the dingy gaze of the window curtain, listening with infantile pleasure as a pat could be. I don't know if that's a typo or if it's supposed to be that. To an organ. She stood for a moment, partly wrapped in the dingy gaze of the window's curtain, listening with infantile pleasure, as Pat could be. To an organ grinder in the dust-brimming courtyard below. When I examined her small hands and drew her attention to their grubby fingernails, she said with a naive frown, "Oh, si, n'est-ce pas bien?" and went to the washing basin. but I said it didn't matter. Did not matter at all. With her brown bobbed hair, luminous grey eyes, and pale skin, she looked perfectly charming. Her hips were no bigger than those of a squatting lad. In fact, I do not hesitate to say, and indeed this is the reason why I linger gratefully in the gazy grey room of memory with little Monique, that among the 80 or so grooves I had operated upon me, she was the only one that gave me a pang of genuine pleasure. La petite maline séduce qui est vingt-sept. She commented amiably and got back into her clothes with the same high-style speed. I asked for another, more elaborate assignment later the same evening, and she said she would meet me in the corner cafe at 9, and swore she had never posé un lapin in all her young life. We returned to the same room, and I could not help saying how very pretty she was, to which she answered demurely, "Tu es bien gentil de dire ça." And then, noticing what I noticed too in the mirror, reflecting our small Eden, the dreadful grimace of clenched teeth tenderness that distorted my mouth, dutiful little Monique, oh, she had been an infant all right. Wanted to know if she could remove the layer of red from her lips, avant qu'on s'escure, in case I planned to kiss her. Of course, I planned it. I let myself go with her more completely than I had with any young lady before, and my last vision that night of the long-lost Monique is touched up with a gaiety that I find seldom associated with any event in my humiliating, sordid, taciturn love life. She looked tremendously pleased with the bonus of 50 I gave her as she trotted onto the April night drizzle with Humpert lumbering in her narrow wake. Stopping before a window display, she said with great gusto, "Je vais, monsieur Disbois." And never may I forget the way her Parisian lips, childish lips, exploded en basse, pronouncing it with an appetite that all but changed the ah into a brief, buoyant, bursting O, as in bought. I had a date with her next day at the 2:15 p.m. in my own rooms, but it was less successful. She seemed to have grown less juvenile, more of a woman overnight. A cold I caught from her led me to cancel a fourth assignment. Nor was I sorry to break an emotional series that threatened to burden me with heartrending fantasies and peter out in dull disappointment. So let her remain sleek, slender Monique as she was for a minute or two, a delinquent nymphet, shining through the matter-of-fact young whore. My brief acquaintance with her started a train of thought that may seem pretty obvious to the reader who knows the ropes. An advertisement in a lewd magazine landed me one brave day in the office of Millie Edith, who began by offering me to choose a kindred soul for a collection of rather formal photographs and a rather soiled album. When I pushed the album away and somehow managed to blurt out my criminal craving, she looked as if about to show me the door. However, after asking me what price I was prepared to disburse, she condescended to put me in touch with a person qui pourrait arranger la chose. Next day, an asthmatic woman, coarsely painted, garlicky, with an almost farcical provincial accent, and a black mustache above a purple lip, took me to what was apparently her own domicile. And there, after explosively kissing the bunched tips of her fat fingers to signify the delectable rosebud quality of her merchandise, she theatrically drew aside a curtain to reveal what I judged was the part of the room where a large and unfastidious family usually slept. It was now empty save for a monstrously plump, sallow, repulsively plain girl of at least 15 with red-ribbon, thick black braids who sat on a chair, perfunctorily nursing a bald doll. When I shook my head and tried to shuffle out of the trap, the woman, talking fast, began removing the dingy woolen jersey from the young giantess's torso. Then, seeing my determination to leave, she demanded "Sun Argent." A door at the end of the room was open, and two men who had been dining in the kitchen joined in the squabble. They were misshapen, bare-necked, very swarthy, and one of them wore dark glasses. A small boy and a begrimed, bow-legged toddler lurked behind them. With the insolent logic of a nightmare, the enraged procuress, indicating the man in the glasses, said he had served in the police. Louis. So that I had better do as I was told. I went up to Marie, for that was her stellar name. Hold on, I'm going too fast. Alright. With the insolent logic of a nightmare, the enraged procuress, indicating the man in the glasses, said he had served the police. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so that I had better do as I was told. I went up to Marie, for that was her stellar name, who by then had quietly transferred her heavy haunches to a stool at the kitchen table and resumed her interrupted soup while the toddler picked up the doll. With a surge of pity dramatizing my idiotic gesture, I thrust a banknote into her indifferent hand. She surrounded my gift to the detective, whereupon I was suffered to leave. Oofda. Sounds dangerous. That brings us to chapter 7. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Is there anyone there? Any lurkers? I need encouragement. You are. Glad to have you. Okay, chapter 7. Alright, are we on? Okay. I do not know if the Pimp's album may not have been another link in the daisy chain, but soon after, for my own safety, I decided to marry. That's a good reason. It occurred to me that regular hours, home-cooked meals, all the conventions of marriage, the prophylactic routine of its bedroom activities, and who knows, the eventual flowering of certain moral values, of certain spiritual subsidies, might help me, if not to purge myself of my degrading and dangerous desires, at least to keep them under Is it ringing? I didn't put this back on. Sorry, guys. I didn't listen. Sorry. Please answer. I should check the voicemail in case it's urgent. Shouldn't be. There should be nothing urgent today. Ah, Darcy. Okay. I have to call Darcy back, but Darcy can wait. That's fine. That's totally fine. Oh, alright. So she decided to take a wife. Sounds good, right? Okay. So it occurred to me that regular hours, home-cooked meals, all the conventions of marriage, the prophylactic routine of its bedroom activities, and, who knows, the eventual flowering of certain moral values, of certain spiritual substitutes might help me, if not to purge myself of my degrading and dangerous desires, at least to keep them under Pacific control. A little money that had come my way after my father's death. Nothing very grand. The Miranda had been sold long before. In addition to my striking, if somewhat brutal good looks, allowed me to enter upon my quest with equanimity. After considerable deliberation, my choice fell on the daughter of a Polish doctor. The good man happened to be treating me for spells of dizziness, tachycardia. We played chess. His daughter watched me from behind her easel, and inserted eyes or knuckles burrowed from me into the cubistic trash that had come. We played chess. His daughter watched me from behind her easel, and inserted eyes or knuckles burrowed from me into the cubistic trash that accomplished misses, then painted instead of lilacs and lambs. Let me repeat with quiet force. I was, and still am, despite Miss Miller's, an exceptionally handsome man, slow-moving, tall, with soft dark hair and a gloomy but all the more seductive cast of demeanor. Exceptional virility often reflects in the subject's displayable features a sullen and congested something that pertains to what he has to conceal. And this was my case. I don't think it was 960. Maybe. Well, did I know, alas, that I could obtain at the snap of my fingers any adult female I choose. In fact, it had become quite a habit with me of not being too attentive to women, they less come toppling, blood-ripe, into my cold lap. Had I been a Francis Moyen, with a taste for flashy ladies, I might have easily found among the many crazed beauties that had lashed my grim rock creatures far more fascinating than Valeria. My choice, however, was prompted by considerations whose essence was, as I realized too late, a piteous compromise. All of which goes to show how dreadfully stupid poor Humpert always was in matters of sex. Quite possibly. We're on chapter 8 now, and we're gonna meet her very soon. Chapter 8. Although I told myself I was looking merely for a soothing presence, a glorified put-à-feu, an animated Merkin, what really attracted me to Valeria was the imitation she gave of a little girl. She gave it to me because she had divined something about me. It was just her style, and I fell for it. Actually, she was at least in her late 20s. I never established her exact age, for even her passport lied, and had mislaid her virginity under circumstances that changed with her reminiscent moods. I, on my part, was as naive as only a pervert can be. She looked fluffy and frocklesome, dressed a la gamine, showed a generous amount of smooth leg, knew how to stress the white of a bare instep by the black of a velvet slipper, and pouted, and dimpled, and romped, and dwindled, and shook her short, curly blonde hair in the cutest and treatest fashion imaginable. After a brief ceremony at the Marie, I took her to the new apartment I had rented, and somewhat to her surprise, had her wear, before I touched her, a girl's plain nightshirt that I had managed to filch from the linen closet of an orphanage. I derived some fun from that nuptial night and had the idiotic. I derived some fun from that nuptial night and had the idiot in hysterics by sunrise. But reality soon arrested itself. The bleached curl revealed its melanic root. The down turned to prickles on a shaved shin. The mobile, moist mouth, no matter how I stuffed it with love. The mobile, moist mouth, no matter how I stuffed it with love, disclosed ignominiously its resemblance to the corresponding part in a treasured portrait of her toad-like dead mama. And presently, instead of a pale little gutter girl, humpered, head on his hands, a large, puffy, short-legged, big-breasted, and practically brainless baba. The state of affairs lasted from 1935 to 1939. Her only asset was a muted nature, which did help to produce an odd sense of comfort in our small, squalid flat. 2 rooms, a hazy view in one window, a brick wall in the other, a tiny kitchen, a shoe-shaped bathtub within which I felt like Murray, but with no white-necked maiden to stab me. We had quite a few cozy evenings together, she deep in her parasoir, I working at a rickety table. We went to movies, bicycle races, and boxing matches. I peeled her stale flesh very seldom, only in cases of great urgency and despair. The grocer opposite had a little daughter whose shadow drove me mad, but with Valeria's help, I did find, after all, some legal outlets to my fantastic predicament. As to cooking, we tactically dismissed the poudre à feu and had most of our meals at a crowded place in Rue Bonaparte, where there were wine stains in the tablecloth and a good deal of foreign babble. And next door, an art dealer displayed in its cluttered window a splendid flamboyant green, red, golden, inky blue accent American stamp. A locomotive with a gigantic smokestack, great baroque lamps, and a tremendous cow catcher, hauling its mauve couches through the stormy prairie night and mixing a lot of sparkle. It's getting harder to read, guys. It's getting harder. That's what she said. Through the stormy prairie night and mixing a lot of spark-strutted black smoke with the fiery thundered clouds. These burst. In the summer of 1939, Mon oncle de Muec died, bequeathing me an annual income of a few $1,000s on condition I come to live in the States and showed some interest in his business. This prospect was most welcome to me. I felt my life needed a shake-up. There was another thing, too. Moth holes had appeared in the plush of matrimonial comfort. During the last weeks, I had kept noticing that my fat Valeria was not her usual self, had acquired a queer restlessness, even showed something like irritation at times, which was quite out of keeping with the stock character she was supposed to impersonate. When I informed her we were shortly to sail for New York, she looked distressed and bewildered. There were some tedious difficulties with her papers. She had an ensign, or better say nonsense, passport, which for some reason a share in her husband's solid Swiss citizenship could not easily transcend, and I decided it was the necessity of queuing in the prefecture and other formalities that had made her so listless, despite my patiently describing to her America, the country of rosy children and great trees, where life would be such an improvement on dull, dingy Paris. We were coming out of some office building one morning, with her papers almost in order, when Valeria, as she waddled by my side, began to shake her poodle head vigorously without saying a word. I let her go on for a while and then asked if she thought she had something inside. She answered, I translate from French when I was... Hi, Ninja. How are you? I translate from French, which was, I imagine, a translation in its turn of some Slavic platitude. There is another man in my life. Now, these are ugly words for a husband to hear. They dazed me, I confess. To beat her up in the street there and then, as an honest vulgarian might have done, was not feasible. Years of secret sufferings had taught me superhuman self-control. So I ushered her into a taxi, which had been invisibly creeping along the curb for some time. In this comparative privacy, I quietly suggested she calm her wild walk. A mounting fury was suffocating me, not because I had particular fondness for that figure of fun, Hubert, but because matters of legal and illegal conjunction were for me alone to decide. And here she was, Valeria, the comedy wife, brazenly preparing to dispose in her own way of my comfort and fate. I demanded her lover's name. I repeated my question, but she kept up a burlesque babble, discoursing on her happiness with me and announcing plans for an immediate divorce. Masque assisi, I shouted at last, striking her on the knee with my fist, and she, without even wincing, stared at me as if the answer were too simple for words, then gave a quick shrug and pointed at the neck of the taxi driver. He pulled up at a small cafe and introduced himself. It was the taxi driver. He pulled up at a small cafe and introduced himself. I do not remember his ridiculous name, but after all those years I still see him quite clearly. A stocky white Russian ex-colonel, with a bushy mustache and a crew cut. There were thousands of them playing that fool's trade in Paris. We sat down at a table. The Tsarist ordered wine, and Valeria, after applying a wet napkin to her knees, went on talking to me rather than to me. She poured words into this dignified receptacle with a volubility. Dignified receptacle with the volubility I had never suspected she had in her. And every now and then she would volley a burst of Slavic at her stolid lover. The situation was preposterous, and became even more so when the taxi colonel, stopping Valeria with a possessive smile, began to unfold his views and plans. With an atrocious accent to his careful French, he delineated the word of love and work, into which he proposed to enter hand in hand with his child wife, Valeria. She by now was preening herself between him and me, roguing her pursed lips, tripling her chin to pick at her blouse bosom, and so forth. And he spoke of her as if she were absent, and also as if she were a kind of little ward that was in the act of being transferred, for her own good, from one wise guardian to another even wiser one. And although my helpless wrath may have exaggerated and disfigured certain impressions, I can swear that he actually consulted me on such things as her diet, her periods, her wardrobe, and the books she had read her periods, her wardrobe, and the books she had read or should read. I think he said, she will like Jean Christophe. Oh, he was quite a scholar, Mr. Taxikov. I put an end to this gibberish by suggesting Valeria pack up her few belongings immediately, upon which the platitudinous colonel gallantly offered to carry them into the car. Reverting to his professional stay, he drove the Humberts to their residence, and all the way Valeria talked, and Humbert, the terrible, deliberated with Humbert. He drove the Humberts to their residence, and all the way Valeria talked, and Humbert, the terrible, deliberated with Humbert, the small whether Humbert should kill her, or her lover, or both, or neither. I remember once handling an automatic belonging to a fellow student. In the days I have not spoken of them, I think, but never mind. When I toyed with the idea of enjoying his little sister, a most vanished nymphet with a black hair bow and then shooting myself. I wondered if Valcheka, as the colonel called her, was really worth shooting, or strangling, or drowning. She had very vulnerable legs, and I decided I would limit myself to hurting her very horribly as soon as we were alone. But we were never. Valcheka, by now shedding torrents of her tears tinged with the mess of her rainbow makeup, started to fill anyhow a trunk and 2 suitcases and bursting cartoon and visions of pudding and a bursting cartoon and a bursting carton and visions of putting on my mountain boots and taking a running kick at her rump were of course impossible to put into execution with the cursed colonel hovering around all the time. I cannot say he behaved instantly or anything like that. On the contrary, he displayed, as a small sideshow and theatricals I had been inveigled in, a discreet, old-world civility, punctuating his movements with all sorts of mispronounced apologies. I demanded a pardon, excuse me, este se que, pues me I, and so forth, and turning away tactfully when Valenchka took down with a flourish her pink panties from the clothesline above the tub. But he seemed to be all over the place at once, agreeing his frame with his anatomy of the flat, reading in my chair my newspaper, untying the knotted string, rolling a cigarette, counting the teaspoons, visiting the bathroom, helping his mole to wrap up the electric fan her father had given her, and carrying streetward her luggage. I sat with arms folded, one hip on the windowsill, dying of hate and boredom. At last both were out of the quivering apartment, and the vibration of the door I had slammed after them still rang in my every nerve. A poor substitute for the backhand slap with which I ought to have hit her across the cheekbone according to the rules of the movies. Clumsily playing my part, I stomped to the bathroom to check, and they had taken my English toilet water. They had not, but I noticed with a spasm of fierce disgust that the former counselor of the Tsar, after thoroughly easing his bladder, had not flushed the toilet. The solemn pool of alien urine with a soggy, tawny cigarette butt disintegrating in it struck me as a crowning insult, and I wildly looked around for a weapon. Actually, I dare say it was nothing but middle-class Russian courtesy, with an oriental tang, perhaps, that had prompted the good Colonel Maximovich, his name suddenly taxies back to me, a very formal person, as they all are, to muffle his private need in decorous silence, so as not to underscore the small size of his host's domicile. With the rush of a gross cascade on the top of his own hush trickle. But this did not enter my mind at the moment. As groaning with rage, I ransacked the kitchen for something better than a broom. Then, cancelling my search, I dashed out of the house with the heroic decision of attacking him barefisted. Despite my natural vigor, I am no pugilist, while the short but broad-shouldered Maximus seemed made of pig iron. The void of the street revealing nothing of my wife's departure except a rhinestone button that had dropped in the mud after perceiving preserving it for 3 unnecessary years in a broken box, may have spared me a bloody nose. But no matter, I had my little revenge in due time. A man from Pasadena told me one day that Mrs. Makovich Zabrovsky had died in childbirth around 1945. The couple had somehow got over to California and had been used there for an excellent salary in a lifelong experiment conducted by a distinguished American ethnologist. The experiment dealt with human and racial reactions to a diet of bananas and dates in a constant position in all fours. My informant, the doctor, swore he had seen with his own eyes obese Volkova and her colonel, by then gray-haired and also quite corpulent, diligently crawling about the well-slept floors of a brightly lit set of room. Fruit in one, water in another, mats in a third, and so on. In the company of several other hired quadrupeds, selected from indigent and helpless groups, I tried to find the results of these tests in the Review of Anthropology, but they appear not to have been published yet. These scientific products take, of course, some time to fluctuate. Alien urine. I hope they will be illustrated with good photographs when they do get printed, although it is not very likely that a prison library will harbor such erudite works. The one to which I am restricted these days, despite my lawyer's favor, is a good example of the inane eclecticism governing the selection of books in prison libraries. They have the Bible, of course, and Dickens, an ancient saint N.Y.G.W. Dillingham, publisher, blah 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 blah, and the Children's Encyclopedia, with some nice photographs of sunshine-haired Girl Scouts in shorts. And A Murder is announced by Agatha Christie, but they also have such coruscating trifles as A Vagabond in Italy by Percy Upson, author of Venice Revisited, Boston, 1868, and a comparatively recent 1946 Who's Who in the limelight, actors and producers, playwrights, and shots of static scenes in looking through the later volume. I was treated last night to one of those dazzling coincidences that logicians loathe and poets love. I transcribe most of the page. Pim Rowland, born in Lundy, Massachusetts, 1922, received stage training at Elsnore Playhouse, Derby, New York. Made debut in Sunburst. Among his many appearances in 2 blocks from here, The Girl in the Green, Scrambled Husbands, The Strange Mushroom, Touch and Go, John Lovely, I Was Dreaming of You. Quality, care, American dramatist. Born in Ocean City, New Jersey, 1911. Educated at Columbia University, started on a commercial career. Dark Age. Quinn Dolores, born 1882 in Dayton, Ohio. Studied 4 stage at American Academy, first played in Ottawa. How the look of my dear love's name, even affixed to some old hag of an actor, still makes me rock with helpless pain. Perhaps she might have been an actress too. Born 1935. Appeared. I noticed the slip of my pen in the preceding paragraph, but please do not correct it, Clarence. In The Murdered Playwright, Quinn the Swine, guilty of killing Quilty. Oh, my Lolita, I have only words to play with. Chapter 9. Oh, alien urine. Nobody wants alien urine in their toilet. Not good. Okay. Divorce proceedings delayed my voyage, and the gloom of yet another world war had settled upon the globe when, after a winter of pneumonia in Portugal, I at last reached the States. In New York, I eagerly accepted the soft job fate offered me. It consisted mainly of thinking up and editing perfume ads. I welcomed its desultory character and pseudo-literary aspects, attending to it whenever I had nothing better to do. On the other hand, I was urged by a wartime university in New York to complete my comparative history of French literature for English-speaking students. Not compete. The first volume took me a couple of years, during which I put in seldom less than 15 hours of work daily. As I look back on those days, I see them divided tidily into ample light and narrow shade, the light pertaining to the solace of research in impelled libraries, the shade to my excruciating desires and insomnias, of which enough has been said. Knowing me by now, the reader can easily imagine how dusty and hot I got, trying to catch a glimpse of nymphets. Alas, always remote. playing in Central Park, and how repulsed I was by the glitter of deodorized career girls that a gray dog in one of the offices kept unloading upon me. Let us skip all that. A dreadful breakdown sent me to a sanatorium for more than a year. I went back to my work only to be hospitalized again. Robust outdoor life seemed to promise me some relief. One of my favorite doctors, a charming, cynical chap with a little brown beard, had a brother, and his brother was about to lead an expedition into Arctic Canada. I was attacked. I can't read anymore, guys. I'm done. Okay, we can do it. I was attached to it as a recorder of psychic reactions. With 2 young botanists and an old carpenter I shared now and then, never very successfully. The favors of one of our nutritionists, Dr. Anita Johnson, who was soon flown back, I'm glad to say. I had little notion of what object the expedition was pursuing. Judging by the number of meteorologists upon it, we may have been tracking to its lair somewhere on Prince of Wales Island, I understand. The wandering and wobbly North Magnetic Pole. One group, jointly with the Canadians, established a weather station on Pier Point in Melville Sound. Another group, equally misguided, collected plankton. A third studied tuberculosis in the tundra. Bert, a film photographer, an insecure fellow with whom at one time I was made to partake in a good deal of menial work, he too had some psychic troubles. Maintaining that big men on our team, the real leaders we never saw, were mainly engaged in checking the influence of climatic amelioration on the coasts of the Arctic fox. We lived in prefabricated timber cabins amid a Precambrian world of granite. We had heaps of supplies, the Reader's Digest, an ice cream mixer, chemical toilets, paper cans for Christmas, paper caps for Christmas. My health improved wonderfully in spite of, or because of all the fantastic blankness of boredom. Surrounded by such dejected vegetation as willow, scrub, and lichens, permeated and I suppose cleansed by a whistling gale, seated on a boulder under a completely translucent sky, through which, however, nothing of importance showed. I felt curiously aloof from my own self. No temptations maddened me. The plump, glossy little Eskimo girls with their fish smell, hideous raven hair, and guinea pig faces evoked even less desire in me than Dr. Johnson had. Nymphets do not occur in polar regions. I left my betters the task of analyzing glacier drifts, dremlins and gremlins, and for the time trying to jot down what I fondly thought were reactions. I noticed, for instance, that dreams under the midnight sun tend to be highly colored, and this, my friend, the photographer, confirmed. I was also supposed to quiz my various companions on a number of important matters such as nostalgia, fear of unknown animals, food fantasies, nocturnal emissions, hobbies, choice of radio programs, changes in outlook, and so forth. Everybody and go hug the dog. He's on my feet right now. Everybody got so fed up with this that I soon dropped the project completely. I want to get to where he meets Lolita. Everybody got so fed up with this that I soon dropped the project completely, and only toward the end of my 20 months of cold labor, as one of the botanists joyously put it, concocted a perfectly spurious and very racy report that the reader will find published in the annuals of adult psychiatrists. Psychophysics. For 1945 or 1946, as well in the issue of Arctic Explorations devoted to that particular expedition, which, in conclusion, was not really concerned with Victorian Island copper or anything like that, as I learned later from my genial doctor, for the nature of its real purpose was what is termed hush-hush. And so let me add merely that whatever it was, that purpose was admirably achieved. The reader will regret to learn that soon after my return to civilization, I had another bout of insanity. If to melancholia and a sense of insufferable oppression that cruel term must be applied, I owe my complete restoration to a discovery I made while being treated at that particular very expensive sanatorium. I discovered there was an endless source of robust enjoyment in trifling with psychiatrists, kindly leading them on, never letting them see what you know all the tricks of the trade. All the tricks of the trade. Yeah, it's really getting bad. But I want to keep going. Letting them see that you know all the tricks of the trade. Inventing for them elaborate dreams, pure classics in style, which make them the dream extortionists. Dream and wake up shrieking, teasing them with fake primal scenes, and never allowing them the slightest glimpse of one's real sexual predicament. By bribing a nurse, I won access to some files and discovered, with glee, cards calling me potentially homosexual and totally impotent. The sport was so excellent and results in my case so ruddy that I stayed on for a whole month after I was quite well, sleeping admirably and eating like a schoolgirl. And then I added another week just for the pleasure of taking on a powerful newcomer, a displaced and surely deranged celebrity, known for his knack of making patients believe they had witnessed their own conception. Chapter 10. Upon signing out, I cast around for some place in the New England countryside or sleepy small town, Elm's White Church, where I could spend... What's wrong, baby? Do you want me to read to you? You can... Oh my god, you can do it. It's cold, so he has his sweater today. Okay, can we read together? You just want to sit there? You can lay down there. Is there enough room? Okay, we'll see if this works. Upon signing myself out, I cast around for some place in Upon signing out, I cast around for some place in the New England countryside or sleepy small town, Elm's White Church. You keep pushing buttons, baby. Come here. Okay, that might be it for today, guys. Why is your mom wearing a sweater? I know. It's cold. It's really cold today. Come here. Okay. No, don't fight it. Don't fight it. Okay. There. Go on your bed. Cuddle up. There we go. Okay. Hi, African. How are you? He tries to climb up in front of the desk with this much space. Problem is he hits a bunch of buttons. Okay. He wants to cuddle. Here we go, guys. I'm okay. It's good to hear. I'm doing okay too. Thank you. Happy Wednesday. We're doing our reading Wednesdays now. Every Wednesday we're doing relaxation reading. 10 a.m. Minnesota time is cool. We're reading Lolita. Upon signing out, I cast around for some place in the New England countryside or sleepy small town, Elm's White Church, where I could spend a studious summer subsisting on a compact box full of notes I had accumulated and bathing in some nearby lake. My work had begun to interest me again. My scholarly exertions. The other thing, my active participation in my uncle's posthumous perfumes, had by then been cut down to a minimum. One of his former employees, the scion of a distinguished family, suggested I spend a few months in the residence of his impoverished cousins, Mr. McCoo, retired, and his wife, who wanted to let their upper story where a late aunt had delicately dwelt. He said they had 2 little daughters, one a baby, the other a girl of 12, and a beautiful garden not far from a beautiful lake. And I said it sounded perfectly perfect. I exchanged letters with these people, satisfying them as I was housebroken, and spent a fantastic night on the tree, imagining in all possible detail the enigmatic nymphet I would coach in French and fondle and humberdish. Nobody met me at the toy station where I alighted with my new expensive bag, and nobody answered the telephone. Eventually, however, a distraught McCoo in wet clothes turned up at the only hotel of green and pink in Ramsdale, with the news that his house had just burned down. Possibly. Owing to this synchronous conflagration that had been raging all night in my veins, his family, he said, had fled to a farm he owned and had taken the car, but a friend of his wife's, a grand person, Mrs. Hayes, of 342 Lawn Street, offered to accommodate me. A lady who lived opposite Mrs. Hayes had lent Mr. Koo her limousine, a marvelously old-fashioned, square-topped affair, manned by a cheerful Negro. Now, since the only reason for my coming at all had vanished, the aforesaid arrangement seemed preposterous. All right, his house would have to be completely rebuilt. So what? Had he not insured it sufficiently? I was angry, disappointed, and bored, but being a polite European, could not refuse to be sent off to Lawn Street in that funeral car. Feeling that otherwise McCoo would devise an even more elaborate means of getting rid of me. I saw him scamper away, and my chauffeur shook his head with a soft chuckle. En route, I swore to myself I would not dream of staying in Ramsdale under any circumstance, but would fly that very day to the Bermudas or the Bahamas or the Blaze. Possibility of sweetness on technicolor beaches that had been trickling through my spine for some time before, and McCoo's cousin had, in fact, sharply diverted that train of thought with his well-meaning, but as it transpired now, absolutely insane suggestion. Speaking of sharp turns, we almost ran over a meddlesome suburban dog, one of those who lie in the wait for cars. As we swerved into Lawn Street a little further, the Hayes house, a white frame whore, appeared, looking dingy and old, more gray than white, the kind of place you know will have a rubber tube affixable to the tub faucet in lieu of a shower. I tipped the chauffeur and hoped he would immediately drive away so that I might double back unannounced to my hotel and back. But the man merely crossed to the other side of the street, where an old lady was calling to him from her porch. What could I do? I pressed the bell button. A colored maid let me in, and left me standing on the mat while she rushed back to the kitchen where something was burning that ought to not burn. The front hall was graced with door chimes, a white-eyed wooden thingamabob of commercial Mexican origin, and that banal darling of the artist middle-class Van Gogh's Arleson. A door ajar to the right afforded a glimpse of a living room with some more Mexican trash in a corner cabinet and stripped sofa along the wall. There was a staircase at the end of the hallway, and I stood mopping my brow. Only now did I realize how hot it had been outdoors, and stare at something, at an old gray tennis ball that lay on an oak chest. There came from the upper landing the contralto voice of Mrs. Hayes, who, leaning over the banisters, inquired melodiously, "Is that Monsieur Humbert?" A bit of cigarette ash dropped from there in addition. Presently, the lady herself, sandals, maroon slacks, yellow silk blouse, squarish face, in that order, came down the steps, her index finger still tapping upon her cigarette. I think I had better describe her right away, to get it over with. The poor lady was in her middle 30s. She had shiny forehead, plucked eyebrows, and quite simple but not attractive features, of a type that may be defined as a weak solution of Marlene Dietrich. Patting her bronze brown bun, she led me into the parlor, and we talked for a minute about the McHugh fire and the privilege of living in Ramsdale. Her very wide-set sea-green eyes had a funny way of traveling all over you, carefully avoiding your own eyes. Her smile was a bit of a quizzical jerk of one eyebrow. And uncoiling herself from the sofa as she talked, she kept making spasmodic dashes at her 3 ashtrays, and the near fender, where lay the brown core of an apple, whereupon she would sink back again, one leg folded under her. She was, obviously, one of those women whose polished words may reflect a book club or bridge club, or any other deadly conventionality. "What's wrong, baby?" I'ma have to end it. We're so close. But never her soul. Women who are completely devoid of humor, women utterly indifferent at heart to a dozen or so possible subjects of a parlor conversation, but very particular about the rules of such conversations, the sunny cellophane of which not very appetizing frustrations can be readily distinguished. I was perfectly aware that if any wild chance I became her lodger, she would methodically proceed to do in regard to me what taking a lodger probably meant to her all along, and I would again be enmeshed in one of those tedious affairs I know so well. But there was no question of my settling there. I could not be happy in that type of household, with the great old magazines on every chair, and a kind of horrible hybridization, because the comedy of so-called functional modern furniture, and tragedy of decrepit rockers and rickety lamp tables with dead lamps. I was led upstairs and left into my room. I inspected it. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Okay, you can be there. That's fine. I love how he's describing this house. Whoops. What is it, baby? Alright, I'm gonna have to end. So, we're right on the verge of meeting Lolita. Like, next page, I think. This little dude needs attention. So, we're on page 39. That's where we're gonna end it. Come here. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you for hanging out. We read for 2 hours. That's pretty good. That's usually my goal. Can Dogo read us a story? Can you, Vito? Do you want to read? Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna be back on in a little bit. I'm gonna go. I think it's too cold. It's actually really cold today. I think he just wants to snuggle under blankets. The wind chill is really cold. Looks like a sophomore telling me. Oh, it feels way colder than that. Crazy. Wow, the wind is really, I don't know, it feels way colder. I don't know if I believe that. Okay, anyways, I hope you have a good one, and we'll continue reading Lolita next Wednesday at 10. Tomorrow at 10, we are going to do a random game, probably Conan. And Friday, we're going to play chess. But every Wednesday from now, we're going to be doing is the reading, is the plan. And then Tuesday, learn something new, which might be more learn how to start a business, or it might be something completely different. I do have to practice the lessons I'm going to be teaching, so it might be learn how to teach intro chess, something like that. Okay, anyways, I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you next time. Oh God, bye.